Now, I don't know what the hell it is with this Moscow, Idaho court, but transparency just simply isn't their thing. We're going to be talking about that at the end of the video, but today's video is the case against Bryan Kohberger. And when we look at the case against Bryan Kohberger, we have to ask ourselves, if presented this case, would you find him guilty without a reasonable doubt? And because that's how the American court system works. You have to ask yourself, is the evidence against Bryan Kohberger enough to find him guilty and send him to death beyond a reasonable doubt? I'm thejbgunner. This is Crime Time. Let's get things kicked off.
Bring it back.
What's going on, everybody? As you guys know, I'm thejbgunner, and this is Crime Time. Now, before we get started, let me first and foremost say thank you to everybody that supports the channel. Any of my channels, regardless of the platform and regardless of the method you choose, whether it's Cash App, Patreon, Venmo, PayPal. Truth is, I couldn't do this each and every day as often as I do if it wasn't for you, the Gun Squad. Big shout out to you guys. Love you so much. And if you too find my content valuable, feel free to hit the links down below. Show some love. Join the Gun Squad. Today, while you're down there, check yourself out, the other content that I provide. If you're not a snowflake, if you want to check out my politics channel, my live streaming channel, amusement park channel, wrestling channel, I got all kinds of shit down, the hiking channel, whatever the fuck, I got a bunch of them. So anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to jump into this before we get into the documents. Now, there are other channels you can go look at the documents. I believe Harsh Reality did a look at the documents this morning. I don't really watch any of these other true crimers, so I have no clue if anybody else did, and I don't give a fuck. But anyways, we're going to start things off because everybody continuously asks me, well, if Bryan Kohberger didn't do it, who did it? Here's the reality. I don't give a fuck. And I don't have to give a fuck. And I don't have to prove that someone else did it, and neither does Bryan Kohberger's attorneys. What matters here is ultimately whether Bryan Kohberger and whether the evidence points to Bryan Kohberger as the guilty party. Now, you can make the argument that circumstantial evidence can convict him, and that is true. However, you as a human being, you as a person, how comfortable would you feel knowing that only circumstantial evidence sent a man to the death penalty? That is what really matters here. But let's go ahead and get on over here because I want to show some things to you, because let's look at the evidence that they actually have provided in the case against Kohberger. Now, I want you guys to know that last night I went back and I read over, actually it was this morning, I read back over the entire PCA. Not just that, but I read over the documents when they went to his house in Pennsylvania. When I looked at all these documents, there was a couple things that stood out to me, but one of the major things that stood out to me is that there was no other evidence. There's been no evidence since this PCA revealed to us, and I kind of understand why it is. Every other piece of evidence that you've heard is all rumored evidence because there's a gag order. Example, Bryan Kohberger had the IDs of the girls. That's not true at all, and the evidence was clearly rumored. It was all rumor. Everything that you're hearing in terms of Bryan Kohberger or any evidence in this case outside of the PCA is 100% rumor, and it can't be considered reality. With a gag order in the case, you have to ask yourself, who would risk their freedom to talk about this? And nobody, by the way, nobody has. There has been no leaks at all at any point in time. News Nation has rambled on about a few things, but those things were found to be not true at all, and the IDs were the perfect example. Now, how do I know that the IDs were not legit? Well, because court documents say that there is no connection between Bryan Kohberger and the girls. The defense could not say that in documentation in a court if there was evidence showing that there was a connection between Bryan Kohberger and the girls. A lot of people say, well, there was 51 terabytes of information, of evidence, given to the defense. Yes, and apparently none of them 51 terabytes of information show a connection between Bryan Kohberger and the girls. So all the Instagram talk, all the ID talk, all that rumor and innuendo that you've received off the internet, it's all bullshit. The only evidence that should be discussed and that is being discussed currently right now is in the PCA. Because here's the truth, it's really all the evidence they got. Until later, after they arrest Kohberger, they may have picked up something here or there. But let's go ahead and take a look. So when we're looking at the evidence, we're looking at touch DNA. We're looking at phone pings. We're looking at surveillance, and we're looking at the car. Now, when it comes to crime, there are three things that people look for. Those three things are motive, means, and opportunity. Now, what does means mean? It means tool, capability, things like that. What does opportunity mean? It means being there. You see what I'm saying? It means you got to be in the vicinity and have the opportunity to commit the crime. Motive, clearly we understand that. Now, we'll get to all the questions I have in regards to this here in just a second, but one of the things we're going to do, we're going to shoot from the hip right off the jump. Let's look at the evidence that they have. DNA. Is it straight DNA? No. What is it? It's touch DNA. Touch DNA is not the same as seminal fluid, spit, something that you've, saliva, which is spit. Touch DNA is, I've touched this microphone. I've let you borrow this microphone now. So now my DNA is transferred from my home to your home as you're using this microphone. Do you see my point? Now, the other DNA, which could be my spit from talking on the microphone, that is flat out DNA. But touch DNA is just my literally touch. Where a minuscule skin cell, a minuscule piece of DNA could be on this thing. And it could be transferred from multiple different things. If someone else just touches this microphone, that DNA of mine that was on this microphone could transfer to your hand. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's not the same thing as spit, blood, bodily fluid, any of that. Semen, any blood, you know what I'm saying? It's not the same. So let's look at touch DNA for just a second. How long does touch DNA stay on this microphone or on a K-bar knife or on a sheath? The answer to this question is DNA has been shown to transfer from a person's hand to a child's toy and then onto a lab coat. Listen to hear that. Lab coat 14. And DNA can hang around for quite some time. Hold on, let me roll this way. Even touch DNA is known to last for up to 2 weeks and outside and 6 weeks or longer inside. So let's just look at this, okay? Because this is a knife sheath, chances are it wasn't just stored outside in the elements. That whoever had the knife sheath or was transferring, it was indoors. So it is safe to say that Bryan Kohberger could have touched that knife sheath, or maybe not even at all. Maybe he touched something else, someone else touched that, and then transferred the touch DNA to the knife sheath. Do you understand? That is the way touch DNA works. And that touch DNA can remain on an object for up to 6 weeks. Bryan Kohberger had only been, hear me out, I believe Bryan Kohberger, at the time of the murders, had only been in Pullman, Washington, I think 3 to 5 months. Somebody correct that in the comments. I don't want to say that as if that's 100%. But I believe Bryan Kohberger had only been there since the beginning of the start of the semester, which I believe was August. Is that an accurate statement? So August, September, October, November, so we're looking at 4 months. Maybe he arrived in July or June, whatever the fuck, but we're looking at less than 6 months. So if DNA can remain on an object, touch DNA can remain on an object for up to 6 weeks, and if someone else touches the object, it can also transfer that touch DNA to another object, how reliable is touch DNA? Is it 100%? Can you 100% with the touch DNA, with that touch DNA that was found, let's just say this, is the touch DNA Bryan Kohberger's? Yes. I will concede right here, right now, that the DNA on that knife sheath belongs to Bryan Kohberger. But the question is how did it get there, and how did the knife sheath get into the house? Now, because there was a stabbing and 4 people were stabbed, I think it's safe to say that the killer of these individuals is the one that had the knife sheath. Now, Bryan Kohberger's DNA is on that knife sheath. But is touch DNA reliable enough to prove 100% that Bryan Kohberger was the one in that house? Wouldn't the killer have been wearing gloves? Is it possible that Bryan Kohberger touched something else and somehow that got on the killer, and before the murders, before the killer even put on his gloves, that he transferred Kohberger's DNA there? However the situation may be, is the touch DNA 100% beyond a reasonable doubt? And my answer is no. Because of the way touch DNA transfers and how long it stays, Bryan Kohberger could have touched that knife sheath a month before that. And the DNA happened to still be on there when the real killer did it. So, in my opinion, that means the touch DNA is not 100%, and in my opinion, it becomes circumstantial. Phone pings. Now, let's look at the phone pings, okay? Now, by the way, when it comes to that DNA, look, there's going to be a lot of people to argue that, and I think we can all agree that the DNA is the best evidence in this case. The DNA is the best evidence of the case. If Bryan Kohberger gets convicted, it'll be because of the DNA. Now, here's shit that has absolutely no foot to stand on. Phone pings. Let's take a look at phone pings. Listen, everybody keeps talking about the phone pings. Now, Bryan Kohberger lived 10 miles away from the house. On average, let's look right here. The maximum usable range of a cell tower is 25 miles. That's 40 kilometers for you people that live in weird countries. And in some cases, cell tower signals can reach up to 45 miles. So, now, we've heard that the ones in Moscow, Idaho, cover a radius of 27 square miles. Phone pings, cell towers, can be 40 to 45 miles. The ones in Moscow have been reported to be 27 square miles. How in the fuck do phone pings put him anywhere when he lives 10 miles away and the cell phone coverage can be up to 40 miles? How in the fuck do the phone pings put him there? Huh? You got to realize he turned off the phone if he did do it. No matter how much you want to say it makes him look suspicious, it does not matter. The phone was off. And there is no phone ping evidence putting him there that night at all. And a lot of you say, well, what about the 12 times before? Remember, it's a radius of 40 to 45 miles, but in Moscow, 27 square miles. That does not actually put Bryan Kohberger at the scene of the crime, which means the evidence is junk. So neither the touch DNA puts him at the scene of the crime, nor does the phone pings put him at the scene of the crime. Now, the question is did he order a K-bar off Amazon? That's a good question, huh? We'll have to learn that because we'll talk about that here in just a second. Surveillance videos. Are we absolutely sure that was Bryan Kohberger's car that was in the surveillance videos? And by the way, the Kohberger car, or the car that they say was suspect vehicle 1, it was still seen driving around at 4:04 a.m., excuse me. Okay, so DoorDash got there at 4. 4:04 a.m., Bryan Kohberger's car was seen, still in the vicinity, or the Elantra was seen. We're getting pretty close to not having enough time to kill people in that time frame. So 4:05 to 4:20 when it was seen speeding off. That is a grand total of 15 minutes, right? Now, I find that odd because if you look at the PCA, 4:12. Well, was it 4:12 or 4:17? That she was 4:13 or some shit like that. She was still on TikTok, Xana. And they claim everybody else was asleep, but starting at 4 o'clock, Starting at 4 o'clock, Dylan Mortensen started opening the door and talking shit. Like, it's really hard. Look, when it comes to Dylan, we'll get to that in a second. All of this shit coming together, there's nothing that stands out as definitive evidence. The surveillance, when it comes to the surveillance in the neighborhood of the car riding around. Now, the one thing that it does stand out is the fact that the car had no front plate. That is true. Now, how many cars in that area had no front plate? I guess that's the question that we need to know. But at the end of the day, does the surveillance video show Bryan Kohberger's car? If there's that much surveillance video, we should be able to see plates. There should be some make out of the plates. We need definitive proof that that was Bryan Kohberger's car. You can't just say it was a white Elantra, and there's a reason why. When they first started talking about this case, they said that the white Elantra involved in this was a 2011 white Elantra. The FBI profilers said this. The FBI experts in this field said it was a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. But in reality, and by the way, they released that December 7th. After they already knew Bryan Kohberger had a 2015 Elantra. Now, 2015 is what they have. Now, here's the truth. You may look at these two cars and say, what's the difference, JB? Well, I'm going to show you right now. Look at this little front piece right here of the 2011, okay? Now, remember, all they were really going on was a couple surveillance videos, and we saw the image from the gas station. You can clearly see the difference in this little front dip right here when you look at the grill. And then you look right here. You see the difference in the shape? You see where this is shaped kind of like a boomerang in the 2015 Elantra? Where this is kind of not, this is just a kind of a little rectangle type thing? Those little differences matter. So immediately, me, as a person that doesn't know shit about cars, as I'm looking at this, just in the initial glance, I can already tell there's a difference between the 2015 and 2011 Elantra. So my question is, FBI expert, how in the fuck couldn't they tell the difference? We already know when they started to say that the Elantra, like I said, they were already investigating Bryan Kohberger before they said anything about a 2011 Elantra. Now, how did they find Bryan Kohberger? Remember, it was the school in Pullman, Washington that said that the car matched. So why would they, after they already knew who Bryan Kohberger was based on his car and based on his ID, then ask you, the public, on December 7th, hey, help us find a 2011 Elantra. They had already found Bryan Kohberger's ID and found the 2015 Elantra. By the way, when it comes to genetic DNA, I want to say this. Prosecutors and courts might overinterpret or misuse genetic. By the way, this is from the NIH.gov. Prosecutors and courts might overinterpret or misuse genetic identification as a source of evidence. DNA evidence demonstrates only that an individual's genetic material was found at a given location, not that the person was present during or indeed guilty of a crime. That is the NIH, the National Institute of Health, .gov. And the big question is it ethical to use genealogy data to solve crimes? And the overall, from the government, answer is no. And yes, the NIH, the same people that put a mask on your face and essentially shut you the fuck down. That's Fauci right there. That's Fauci right the fuck there. The NIH, Peter Dasky, Anthony Fauci, all that bullshit, right? Now, the question is, when you look essentially at the evidence, was it Bryan Kohberger's car? That question needs to be asked. Do you know for 100% fact that it was Bryan Kohberger's car? No one can say factually yes, right? The phone pings, do they put him in the location? The answer is no. It doesn't definitively put him in the location. Touch DNA, does that definitively put him in the location? The answer is no. Now let's look at crimes in general. Let's look at some of the things that they ask for. We've talked about motive, means, opportunity. We've talked about all this shit. In fact, let me go ahead and get here. We're not going there. When you look at investigative techniques, in determining the course of investigation, many law enforcement organizations use 3 indicators of suspicion. Describe basically the MMO. That's what MMO means. Motive, means, and opportunity. That is what, and everybody knows this. That's what an MO is. Now, let's look at motive. Is there a motive that has been presented? The answer is no. Weapon. Has there been a weapon, which is one of the tools which goes under means, that has been found for this crime? The answer is no. Let me go ahead and make this big again. Witnesses. Has there been any witnesses to the crime? The answer is no. You got Dylan Mortensen, who didn't call the police for several hours, saying that she saw a figure in black. But that witness, I assure you, could not point Bryan Kohberger out of a lineup and say that's him. Not prior to now. So motive, no. Weapon, no. Witnesses, no. DNA, only touch and trace. Now that is legit evidence that they can particularly use, but we've already discussed that. Now means, we're talking about tools and capability. Does Bryan Kohberger have the physical capability to kill 4 human beings? He's young, he's in shape, it seems. So I would say, physically, does he have the ability? That depends on whether you think he has the capability of taking down Ethan or not. Now, Ethan was found dead in the bed, so I don't know. Ethan was essentially pretty much dead in the bed. We already know that Xana is the person that the PCA says was visible on the floor when, what's-his-name, went into that area. Opportunity. When you're looking at MMO, you're looking at motive? No. Means? Maybe. But there's no weapon. There's only capability. Opportunity. The answer so far, because you cannot put Bryan Kohberger in the location, the answer is no. So no motive, no means because you have no weapon, you only have his capability, and no opportunity because there's nothing, and I mean nothing, that puts Bryan Kohberger at that house on the night of the murders. You can speculate and say, well, I assume he was there because of X, Y, and Z, but there is no definitive, absolute evidence that puts Bryan Kohberger at that house or with the weapon or with the motive in this case. Does he have any relationship to these people? Does he even know them? There is no evidence that he even knew who they were. All rumored evidence that you've heard is fake. That is the real evidence that exists at this point in time. This leads us to, so I'm going to ask you, so my position is, look, I don't know if he's guilty or not, but legally, there's no way. There's no way to find him guilty. There's not a single one of those check boxes that you could check off when it comes to MMO. Not a single one. Now let's go ahead and continue because there are some other things going on. I want to show you guys some things. What we're seeing here, this was filed on January 5th, is amended order governing courthouse and courtroom conduct. So, look, not only is, and by the way, all the trolls and all the pro-Kohberger guilty people, all they can say is, well, who did it then? That's all they ever say. Well, who did it then? I don't know. That's not my job to prove. Your job is to prove that Bryan Kohberger did it. My job is not to prove that some other motherfucker did it. Nor is the defense. That's your fucking problem, tard, for putting all your eggs in one basket. Now, let's get back to this. If you didn't think this case was crazy enough, secret enough, not transparent enough, let's move to this new motion. In the District Court of, we already know, amended order governing courthouse and courtroom conduct. The order governs courthouse, and courtroom conduct and media activities in this case. The order shall supersede any prior order governing courthouse and court. So basically, anything that previously said prior to this is no good. This is the final conduct. Okay? Here's what we got. Courtroom seating and attendance. Seating for victims' families, counsel, defendants' families, and court personnel. Certain seating may be reserved for counsel, authorized court, basically all them people. General public and media seating. The public and members of the media may be permitted in the courtroom as space permits as first come basis. No person, you know what, we don't even have, look, this is 5 pages. We don't actually have to read all this, and I'm going to tell you why. Because what matters is this page right here. Because this is basically what they mailed out to the journalists. This is Alex Caparillo. This is the document that they essentially mailed out to the journalists. All right? Oh, shit. The courtroom. Let me pull this back up. New courtroom conduct. The courtroom conduct order issued in State versus Kohberger has been amended, making tweaks that include alignment with a November order regarding cameras in the courtroom. The amended order, now available here and on the Case of Interest website, provides for live streaming of public hearings through John Judge's YouTube channel. Which, by the way, this motherfucker, I think he wanted to get some YouTube revenue. No videos, no nothing, 6.23 thousand subscribers. Goddamn. It's funny that it's his personal YouTube page. That's fun. Anyway, using court equipment as an alternative for third-party use of cameras and cameras in the courtroom. The conduct order allows for capture and use, but not alteration of court live stream footage. So they're saying you cannot alter the footage. You motherfuckers cannot edit the footage at all. The order also addresses proceedings that will not be live streamed. God damn it. That will not be live streamed. Where'd it go? No other video or audio recording or photography is permitted in the courtroom per the amended order. Space remains reserved outside of the courthouse for new stand-ups or interviews. Live streaming is provided in addition to in-person access to public proceedings in this case. As before, courtroom seating for the media and public remains first come, first served. Cell phones may be carried into the courtroom, but as in previous orders, they must be turned off. You understand that? In a change from previous orders, laptops and similar devices may be used for note-taking in the courtroom, but cannot be used to email, record, or transmit audio, images, or written accounts of proceedings to platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, blogs. So there's no more live tweeting for reporters inside the courtroom is basically what that means. Or other similar platforms or websites while inside of the courtroom. So I want you to understand, basically, they're saying there'll be private proceedings that won't be live streamed, and even the people that's in the courtroom that are reporters, that are media, they're not allowed to sit and text or tweet live reports of what's going on. And they must shut their phones off completely when they come in there. I've never seen no shit like this in my life. Why is there so much goddamn secrecy here? You have to ask yourself that. The introduction to the order states, the court is mindful of the need to balance the constitutional right of the defendant to a fair hearing, the public's right to inform in conjunction with the constitutional and statutory rights of the media to attend the proceedings, the court's interest in maintaining blah, blah, blah. Hearings scheduled for Friday, January 26th, which is next, will be the first to operate under the new camera arrangement. Per an order issued last month, the court that day will hold hearings on a motion to reconsider orders denying motions to dismiss indictment, and in all the alternative for permission to appeal from interlocutory orders and stay of proceedings. The first of these hearings at 11 a.m. will be sealed per the explanation provided in the order. The second of these hearings, so the morning one about the dismissal of the case, will be sealed. The second of these hearings at 1 p.m. will be open to the public and streamed. Following those hearings on the same day, the court will hold a scheduling conference. This will be open to the public and will be streamed. So we got two things we're going to see that day. And that will be over here on Judge John Judge's YouTube page. And that's kind of what we have in terms of this. It's wild, ain't it? Now, we also got some other orders I want to talk about here for just a second. Motion to temporarily seal objection to defendant's motion to reconsider orders denying motions. They want to seal, I want you to understand this, the objection to the defense's motion to dismiss the indictment, which is what we just talked about basically in the morning hearing. And in the alternative, for a permission to appeal from interlocutory orders and stay of proceeding. So it's the prosecution that seems to want all this shit secret, right? Come now, the state of Idaho, by and through the Latah County prosecuting attorney, and hereby moves the court pursuant to Idaho court admission, blah, blah. Motion to temporarily seal objection to the, we just heard all that. Anyways, for a temporary order sealing the state's objection to the defense's motion to dismiss, you pretty much know what that is. It says it says that the release of this information or disclosure would, one, interfere with enforcement proceedings. I don't see how. Deprive a person of a right to a fair trial or impartial adjudication. Why would any of those things count right now to the prosecution? Constitute an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy. I believe that is what it is. The privacy. Disclose, or this one, disclose the identity of a confidential source. Or disclose investigative techniques and procedures. So it is either one of two things. They're trying to hide the method of how they did shit, which by its is unconstitutional. Hey, we don't want to show you how we figured you were guilty. That's not how life works. That's not how the courts work. Or it is to conceal a witness. But here's the truth. Everybody has look, everyone, particularly the defense, has the right to know what accusations are coming at them from any given witness. That's, once again, the way the court works. God damn it. Let me get this back. Let me move this back. The undersigned seek this protection pending a hearing on the matter. Blah, blah, blah. So you see they're still trying. The prosecution doesn't seem to want any information out there to you. Look, man, I understand there are some things that the defense wants sealed as well, but for the most part, particularly the responses to the motion to dismiss, every single time there's been the motion to dismiss, prosecution's like, nah, man, we don't want motherfuckers to know this information. Take it how you want to take it. My view on this, and they don't want people even, like reporters even typing what's in there, in my opinion at this point in time, there's still all this transparency, which I don't understand because it doesn't, I understand when someone's doing an investigation, you can't let the public know too much. But the investigation's over. They found their perp. The investigation is completely over. What is the big fucking deal about the public knowing certain shit? And we're talking about simple shit. To the point where journalists who you're allowing in the courtroom, you're not allowing them to even type or tweet, live tweet during this, but yet you're live streaming the event? Make that make sense. What's the difference between you live streaming and them live typing it? Makes no sense to me. But anyway, the case against Bryan Kohberger, look, man, when discussing the case against Bryan Kohberger, you have to ask yourself some major questions. And one of the major questions is the reasonable doubt. And that's what I think I'm going to call this video. The case against Bryan Kohberger. Reasonable doubt or whatever. Because you have to ask yourself, when you look over the evidence, is the evidence solid? Are you comfortable 100% that the MMO fits? And if the answer is no, how the fuck can you send a man to his death? Especially when clearly the court system isn't being transparent. I've never seen this before. I've never seen a court in a court case so gung-ho on keeping everything so hidden. For God's sakes, they buried the fucking house. And so all the he's guilty people out there, please tell me something. Why is all of this happening? Why is there so much secrecy? If they've had it 6 weeks into the case, they found Kohberger, they got him. And they're so sure it's him. Why all the secrecy? Why the need to bury the house? Why the need for the gag order? Why the need for any of this? Why have we not heard a 911 call? What about body cam footage? Pennsylvania claims they didn't even have any body cam footage and none of the motherfuckers that went to arrest him. Do you really believe that? Now, I'm not the rest of these conspiracy theorists talking about tunnels and Ninja Turtles and shit like this. Those people are goobers. But I'm asking legitimate questions because they matter in terms of finding someone guilty. Legally, they matter. I'm thejbgunner. This is Crime Time. I'll see you guys later. If you guys like what I do here and you find my content valuable, feel free to hit the links down below. Support the channel. Show your boys some love. Let me know in the comment section what you think. I'm out of here.